You just watched a ball land soft, check once, and trickle down to the cup like it was on a string. No flip, no stab, no fat shot sculled across the green. And here's the part that should bother you. That took no lesson, no coach. No $50 wedge with the shiny new grooves. I'm going to tell you something that took me almost 2 years to prove. Chipping was never supposed to be the hard part of golf. It got made hard on purpose. The simplest scoring shot in the game got buried under gadgets and hour-long lessons, and the method that makes it easy is older than your grandfather. The trail starts with a man they called Little Poison, a book from 1979 that almost nobody reads anymore, and a single sentence I found that changed how I stand over every short shot. And before you think this only works for young players with new equipment, let me promise you this. You can test everything I found tonight on your living room carpet with a club you already own. Let me take you back to where this started for me. I was standing at the far end of a public range on a cold Tuesday, the kind where you have the place to yourself. There was an old man 3 mats down. He wasn't hitting drivers. He was just chipping over and over into a bucket maybe 40 feet away. And every single ball dropped in with the same soft little sound. I'd been taking lessons for a year. I couldn't do what he was doing. So I walked over and asked him who taught him. He didn't say a name. He said, "A dead man's book." Then he packed up and left. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So here is the first clue, the thing that cracked the whole case open for me. Watch any weekend golfer around the green and you'll see the same move every time. They try to lift the ball. There's this little scoop, this flip of the wrists at the last second, like they're trying to help the ball into the air with a shovel. And that one instinct is why they chunk it, why they blade it over the green, why they stand there in the fairway more afraid of a 30-foot chip than a 200-yard drive. Here's the truth I fought against for months because it felt too simple. You never lift a chip. Not ever. The club is already built to do it for you. Every wedge, every iron in your bag has loft. That angle on the face, that's the machine that gets the ball airborne. Your only job is to strike down and through and let that angle throw the ball up. The moment you try to help it, you take the machine out of the equation and you fail. I want you to picture it, because this is the thing that finally made it click for me. If you take a wedge and you swing down into the back of the ball, striking the ball first and the ground second, the loft launches it perfectly every time. But your brain doesn't trust that. Your brain sees the ground and screams, "Lift it, get it up." And so you scoop. The club bottoms out behind the ball, you catch it fat, and it dribbles 10 feet. That fear is the enemy. And somebody, somewhere, figured out that scared golfers spend money. That's the first knot untied. But it opened a much bigger question for me, one that kept me up at night. If the fix is that simple, if it's just trust the loft and hit down, then why does nobody teach it that way? Why did I pay for a year of lessons and never once hear it put that plainly? Somebody had to have known this. Somebody had to have written it down. And that's when I started digging into the old books. The name that kept surfacing was Paul Runyan. And once I found him, I couldn't believe he wasn't a household name in every clubhouse in the country. Paul Runyan was born in 1908 in Arkansas. He was small. He was one of the shortest hitters on the professional tour in his day, giving up 50, sometimes 75 yards off the tee to the big men he played against. By every logic of the game, he should have been beaten every week. Instead, they gave him a nickname, Little Poison, because he'd out-chip and out-putt you until you were dead on the scorecard and there was nothing you could do about it. Here's what stopped me cold. In 1938, Paul Runyan played Sam Snead in the final of the PGA Championship. Snead was a giant of the game, one of the longest, most powerful hitters who ever lived. On some holes, Runyan was hitting his approach while Snead was still walking to a drive 75 yards ahead. And Runyan didn't just win, he destroyed him. 8-7, the most lopsided final in the history of that championship. A small man who couldn't overpower anyone beat the strongest player alive, and he did it almost entirely with the short shots around the green, the ones you and I are afraid of. So how did he do it? Runyan spent his whole life on this, and near the end of it, in 1979, he put the method into a book called The Short Way to Lower Scoring. And when I finally tracked down a copy and read the chipping section, my jaw was on the floor. Because everything he wrote is the exact opposite of what a scared amateur does. Quiet wrists, weight on the front foot and staying there, hands ahead of the ball, and that loft, that beautiful built-in loft, doing all the lifting so the player never has to. But here's the piece that turned this from a golf tip into something that genuinely made me angry. Runyan didn't treat the chip like a small swing. He treated it like a putt. Same grip pressure, same rocking of the shoulders, same dead quiet hands. He was saying, if you can roll a putt, you already own the motion for the perfect chip. You just needed someone to tell you. And that's the knot that leads to the villain of this whole story. Because if a two-time major champion laid this out plainly in 1979 in a book you can still find, then this knowledge didn't disappear by accident. It got pushed aside. And the more I dug, the clearer it became who benefited from you forgetting it. Think about what happened to golf equipment starting in the late 1980s and through the 1990s. That's when the specialized wedge exploded. Suddenly you didn't need one wedge. You needed 3 or 4, each with a different loft. 60 degrees, 58, 56, 52, each one promising to make the ball float up softer than the last. Every one of them sold you on the same fantasy, that the club would do something magical, that you needed the fancy tool to get the ball high and stopping, but Runyan's whole method said the opposite. He said use less loft, not more. He said run the ball along the ground like a putt whenever you can, because a ball rolling on the ground is the most reliable thing in golf, and a ball flying high through the air is the least. A high, soft, flopping chip has a dozen ways to go wrong. A low, running chip has almost none, and you cannot sell a man 3 new wedges if you tell him the truth that his 8-iron and a putting stroke will get the ball closer than any of them. So think about what got sold to you. The lob wedge, so you could try the hardest, highest, most dangerous shot in the game as your default. The lessons to fix the shot the lob wedge made you worse at, the training aids strapped to your wrists. All of it built on the one lie that started this whole trail. The lie that you have to get the ball up in the air. When the oldest, quietest voices in the game are all saying, keep it low, let it roll, and stop paying for the privilege of making it hard. That's the villain. Not one company, not one person, a whole industry that figured out a frightened golfer with a wallet is worth more than a confident one with an 8-iron. And once I saw it that way, I couldn't unsee it. Now here's where I know exactly what you're thinking, because I thought it too. You're thinking this is fine for a man who can get to a course, who has a short game area to practice, who has time and money to burn on buckets of balls. And you're sitting there in a house, maybe in a town where the nearest green is 30 minutes away, wondering how any of this reaches you tonight. So let me pull you all the way in, because this is the part that convinced me the old-timers were smarter than every coach I ever paid. You do not need a golf course to fix your chipping. You do not need to spend $1. You need a stretch of carpet, or a hallway, or a patch of flat grass in the backyard, and one club you already own. That's it. And the reason this works comes straight out of what Runyan understood. The chip is not an athletic move. It's a repeatable little stroke, and a repeatable stroke is built indoors, slowly, without a ball flying anywhere. Here's the first thing I want you to do, and you can do it right now during this video if you've got a club leaning in the closet. Take your putter grip, the way you hold it to putt, and put that exact grip on a wedge or a short iron. Now stand to the ball, push almost all your weight onto your front foot, maybe 70%, your left foot if you swing right-handed, and here's the key. Keep it there. Do not let it shift back. Slide your hand slightly ahead of the ball so the shaft leans a little toward the target. Play the ball back, off your right foot, back toward your trailing side. Now, without a ball at all, Just rock your shoulders back and through, like the pendulum on a grandfather clock, and let the club brush the carpet. Wrists dead. No flip, no scoop. Just the shoulders rocking and the club sweeping the floor. That brushing sound, that clean, quiet swish along the carpet, that is the whole secret. If you can make that same sound 10 times in a row in the same spot on the floor, you already have a better chipping motion than most people who've played for 20 years. Picture yourself standing over that 30-foot chip, wallet lighter by a year of lessons, still feeling that cold flush of fear before every scoop. That fear is the exact thing I want to hand back to you fixed for good, and it's all laid out in the Complete Golf Fix system. It gathers every fix, every case, and every tool in one place, so you finally stop guessing and start diagnosing exactly where your shots are leaking strokes, doing the 15-second grip audit that changes ball flight right away, and running the alignment sequence in the correct order at last. And here's your free test tonight. On the very carpet you're standing on, take a wedge, put your putting grip on it, lean the shaft slightly forward, and rock your shoulders like a pendulum without a ball. If the club brushes the floor clean and quiet, you just proved the whole thing cost you nothing to own. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. This works whether you play tomorrow or 6 months from now, because the shots costing you strokes are costing you every single round you play. Now let me pull you all the way in, because there's something these old-timers understood that convinced me they were smarter than every coach I ever paid. I did this in my kitchen for 2 weeks before I ever took it to the course. And the first time I brought it out to a real chip, the ball came off exactly the way that old man's did at the range. Low checking, rolling out to the hole, no fear, no scoop, because I'd already built the motion 1,000 times where nothing could go wrong. There's a second drill for the existing home, and this one I love because it costs nothing and it kills the scoop instinct dead. Take a second club or a broom handle or even a yardstick and hold it against the lead side of your grip so it runs up along your forearm. Now make your little chipping stroke. If you flip your wrists at impact, that shaft or that stick will jab you in the side. It gives you instant feedback. Keep your hands leading, keep the shaft leaning forward through the strike, and the stick never touches you. That drill was in the spirit of what these old teachers preached decades ago, and you can build it with a broom from your own closet tonight. And when you do finally get to grass, don't reach for the lob wedge. Reach for the 8-iron, make that same putting stroke, land the ball just onto the green, and watch what happens. It'll come out low, hop once, and roll like a putt the rest of the way. That's the shot Runyan built a career on. The boring one, the one nobody tries to sell you. So that's the motion, and it's yours now, built at home for nothing, but the motion was only half of what I was chasing, because a good stroke still leaves one enormous question hanging, the question that separates people who chip well from people who chip like a machine. If I'm supposed to land the ball on the green and let it roll, then how far does it roll? How do I know where to land it? And that answer turned out to be the most beautiful thing in this entire investigation. Here's the contradiction that had me stuck for a long time. Every good chipper I watched seemed to just know how far a ball would run after it landed. It looked like feel, like some gift you either had or you didn't. And that's exactly what makes people quit, that belief that touch around the greens is a talent you're born with. But it isn't a gift, it's a ratio. And once you know the ratio, the guesswork disappears. The old teachers understood that a chip is really 2 shots stitched together. There's the carry, the part that flies through the air, and the roll, the part on the ground after it lands. And the club you choose changes the balance between those two. Here's the simple version that changed my scoring. With a low lofted club, an 8-iron say, the ball flies about 1 part in the air and rolls about 7 parts on the ground. 1 to 7. It comes out low and runs a long way. With a pitching wedge, it's closer to 1 part, carried a 2 parts roll. And with your sand wedge, it's near 1-to-1, about the same distance in the air as on the ground. So the game becomes almost mathematical, and I mean that in the best way. You pick your landing spot first, always. You want to land the ball on the green, just past the edge, on the flat, where the bounce is predictable, and let the roll do the traveling. Then you look at how far it has to roll to the hole, and you pick the club whose ratio matches. Short roll to a closed pin, more loft, land it near the hole. Long roll across the whole green, less loft, land it just on the edge, and let it release all the way to the cup like a putt. I remember the round where this locked in for me. Par 3, pin at the back. I'd short-sighted myself off the front edge with maybe 60 feet to the hole across flat green. Old me would have grabbed the sand wedge and tried to fly it all the way, and I'd have either dumped it short or launched it long, one or the other. Instead, I took a 7-iron, made that same dead-handed putting stroke, landed it 4 feet onto the green, and watched it trundle the whole 60 feet and stop 2 feet from the cup. Tap in. And I swear, the group behind me went quiet. It looked like a magic trick. It was arithmetic. That's the clue snapping into place. Feel isn't a gift. It's a ratio. And once you know it, you can land every chip on the same safe spot and just change clubs to change the roll. One motion, many clubs. That's the freedom Runyan was writing about. But there was still one last piece missing for me, the thing that ties the whole method into a single move you can trust under pressure when your hands are shaking and the match is on the line. And I found it in a different book, written by a different man, published 13 years after Runyan's, and it's the piece I want to hand you now. The man was Harvey Penick. If you know one name in the teaching of this game, it should be his. Penick spent something like 75 years teaching golf in Austin, Texas, quietly, without fanfare, keeping his notes in a little red notebook he wouldn't show anyone. He said the notes were for his son. For decades, that notebook stayed private. Then, in 1992, when he was in his late 80s and near the end of his life, he finally let it be published. They called it Harvey Penick's Little Red Book. It went on to sell more than 1 million copies, one of the best-selling sports books ever printed, and buried in it is the single, simplest instruction on chipping I have ever read. Penick told his students to chip with the same stroke they used to putt, and to use a club with a little loft, and to just clip the ball off the top of the grass. But here's the exact image that finished this whole trail for me, the thing I'd been circling for 2 years. He taught that the chipping motion should feel like you are simply putting with a lofted club, not a small golf swing. A putt, you set up almost like you're putting, you make the same quiet stroke you'd make on a 10-foot putt, and the only difference is the club in your hands has loft, so the ball pops up a little before it rolls. Think about what that does to your nerves. The most reliable motion any golfer owns is their putting stroke, because they make it more than any other. Penick's genius was to say, don't build a whole new frightening move around the green. Borrow the one you already trust. Take your putting stroke, the calm one, the boring one. Put a 7-iron or an 8-iron in your hands. Keep your weight forward and your hands ahead, and just stroke the chip like a long putt. The loft handles the air. The ratio handles the roll. And your own trusted putting motion handles the strike. That's the whole thing. That's the method that a 2-time major champion proved in the 1930s, that he wrote down in 1979, that the greatest teacher of the century confirmed in his private notebook and finally released in 1992. Keep the wrists dead. Weight forward and staying there. Hands ahead, ball back, shaft leaning toward the target. Trust the loft to lift it. Pick your landing spot on the flat, just onto the green. Choose the club by the ratio, 1-to-7 for the long roll, 1-to-1 for the short one. And make it all with the same calm pendulum stroke you'd use on a putt. You can go do that this weekend. You can build every piece of it on your carpet this week for nothing, and you will never again stand over a chip and feel that cold flush of fear, because there is nothing in that motion to go wrong. No lift, no flip, no hope. Just a stroke you already own and a club doing the job it was built to do, Here's what I keep coming back to. I paid for a year of lessons and never got this. And these two men laid it out in plain language, in books you can hold in your hand, decades ago. The knowledge was never lost. It was just quietly stepped over, drowned out by the noise of the next new wedge and the next promise fix, because a golfer who's afraid around the green is a golfer who keeps buying. The method didn't fail you. It was just kept a little out of reach. And now it isn't. That old man at the range wouldn't tell me the name. He just said a dead man's book. It took me 2 years, but I found the book. Both of them, and now you're holding what took me all that time to trace, and it cost you nothing but the last few minutes. If this reached you, I want you to feel what I felt when the ball first checked and rolled and dropped and I realized I'd been sold fear for a year. That's not a golf feeling. That's the feeling of getting back something that was quietly taken from you. You're the kind of person who wants the whole trail, not just the tip. You want to know why it works, who proved it, and where it was written down, because you've been burned by empty promises before and you're done taking things on faith. That's exactly who I make these for. So here's my question, and I want a real answer in the comments. When you get to the edge of the green, which club do you reach for first? The lob wedge or the 8-iron? Be honest. And after you try the putt and stroke chip on your carpet this week, come back and tell me if that scoop instinct finally died. Leave a comment. I read them, and this is the kind of thing this community was built to trade. Because that's what this channel is. Not me lecturing you. A group of people digging up the practical, low-cost knowledge that got buried under things you have to keep paying for and handing it back around. If that's you, come along for the next one, because I've just started pulling a thread on a 100-year-old putting method that a Scottish club maker swore made 3 putts almost impossible, and there's a diagram from the 1890s I can't stop staring at. I'll see you when I've cracked it. Now, tonight you saw why the scoop fails and where the trail begins. Inside my membership, I walk you through Runyan's full short game method, stroke by stroke, right where this video left off. And if something doesn't click, you just ask me, and a real person answers you myself, never a machine. You'd belong with folks like you in the practical wisdom circle. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel any time. Now that your chipping is sorted, let's fix the part of the game that costs you the most strokes. In the next video, I'll show you a simple putting move that finally makes those short ones drop. It's starting right here.